leash, but they talk. Whereas the other, the first type of pet that I referred to, some of those that I've seen aren't even allowed to use words. They're just making noises unless it comes to their check-in, and then they can speak. But other than that, it's simply just animal noises. Off of that, one that I just mentioned briefly, but I didn't in the original list, is furries. And furries, they have their power animal or totem animal that they relate to. I know one who is a cat. I know another who is a fox. And they have these furry suits, like big onesies, and that's why they're referred to as furries, that they wear during all play. The one that is a fox, as soon as she comes home from work, she goes into the fox suit and pretty much stays that way for as long as she's at home. That in itself is a whole other thing. Now that's a large fetish just in your BDSM community with conventions and things of that nature. And it's really growing in popularity, I guess, because people find those onesies so comfortable. The next one to get into are the littles. And the littles, I don't, it's kind of like brats. It's not my thing. It is age play, pretty much. And it's not a style that is for me. I know people that it definitely works for. But for myself, it's not a big thing, because that is where someone actually plays that they are a small child. And there's different levels of that. And most of the people with littles think of adult baby diaper lovers and things of that nature. That is a form of it, but that's not necessarily all of it. Like, it's not always, my dada's dirty, change me, feed me, that kind of stuff. It's just getting stuffed animals and being allowed to have this extremely childlike mentality. And I do know one person, not very well, but I do know one person that is big into this, that is big as a little. And that's her main thing. Like, her greatest rewards are receiving coloring books and crayons and markers. She's not allowed to use colored pencils unless her daddy dom is around, because she might hurt herself or she might run through the house with them. And it's very interesting to see, like, from the psychological standpoint, it intrigues me greatly. But again, and I don't judge it negatively, and I hope I don't come across that I do. It's just kind of like the brats. It's just not my thing. So I tend to stay away from that as far as if I'm talking to someone about them becoming my submissive and that is what they're looking for, then we're just not going to click. And that's where the negotiation is so important, and being open and honest. No matter how much general conversation we have, and we may really click during that conversation, because it comes down to needs being met. And I would not be able to meet the needs of a brat. I wouldn't be able to meet the needs of a little. And it's my responsibility and their responsibility to be completely open and honest during that negotiation. And I cannot stress, as you have already heard in the first 3 episodes, how important communication is. Open and honest communication. So that brings us to the last one that I'm going to define today. And there are so many of these. It would take me days to list out the different types that I have seen personally. The last one is the bottom slaves. In the BDSM community, in a DS relationship, when someone reaches the level of devotion and commitment and love and respect for the dominant, and it's been determined through check-ins and this communication that it is going to move to the next level, and there's going to be a collaring. Some people give out a consideration collar, like, okay, we've played a lot, we've talked, now I'm going to consider you as my slave. And I went into this in the first episode. I may have touched on it in the second. That is the highest level. So that's why I preface this with bottom slaves. So with the bottom slave, that is the person that you may think of stereotypically when you think of hardcore BDSM. The person that is subhuman, that is not allowed to use furniture, not like the pets, but even beyond that. They're not allowed to look you in the eye. They're not allowed to use your name. They're not allowed to speak. They may have to wear a GIMP mask when company is over, and a certain suit or uniform or nothing, and serve your guests and act as furniture for your guests or for you while you have these guests over. That one is also a difficult one for me in the extreme cases. And I've talked to a lot of people about that. And some people have the initial reaction or the thought, well, sounds like you're too caring to be a dominant. You just want to, it sounds to me like you really want to serve your submissives. And that's not at all the case, but in some ways, that's exactly the job of the dominant. We're providing for them, they're providing for us, and it really is a two-way street there. And when I thought to do this podcast, that was one of the biggest things that I wanted to get across, that people have so incredibly wrong when it comes to the DS relationship. A shout out to Vanilla Umbrella. If you don't have that app, it's a good app. It's kind of like Tinder with a whole lot more features. It's got the swiping, and there's a radar on there that can show you, how many kinksters are within a certain radius of you. There's chat on there. It seems to be a really good app. So with that, shout out to Vanilla Umbrella, and how that ties into the reason that I started the podcast was because I was seeing so many young girls on there. And by young, I'm almost 40, so I'm talking of age. You have to be at least 18 to be on the app. 18 to 25-year-olds that are all of a sudden interested in BDSM or DS relationships specifically, seems to be the majority. But most of their profiles start out, I'm new to this. I'm looking for someone to help me, to guide me, to teach me. And then you see a bunch of guys' profiles, and they don't say anything about being new, but you can read their description. And if you know what you're looking for, you can tell that they're new, and they're just really completely looking to abuse someone, either intentionally or unintentionally. Thankfully, Vanilla Umbrella actually has a way to go through that and kick some of these people out. And that's why I unofficially endorse that app, is because one of their things is, it said, are you tired of getting pics? And you know the kind of pics that I'm talking about. Again, I'm trying to keep this PG-13, so I'm not going to say it, but private part pics. This was on their Twitter post. It says, if you're tired of that, then we have a way to deal with that. It is a very useful tool, and there are ways to report people, ways to prevent that abuse, and I commend them for their stance on that. But it doesn't change the fact that most of the girls that are, or young women that I see on there, are putting themselves into a bad position by not doing the research, by not truly understanding what it means to put yourself out there as a submissive. Because most people that are new to it don't really understand what it is all about. So please share this if you know someone that's new to the lifestyle. Don't be ashamed of the lifestyle. You may be preventing abuse by sharing this and saying, hey, check this guy out. He's going to break it down for you. He's going to get rid of the myths of BDSM and help you understand what it really is. And you can do that just by giving them the website. It's cauldronscrypt.com/contact resources. At the bottom of the page, I've got an iTunes link. I've got the Spreaker link. Getting into common mistakes. Those are the submissive types that I want to talk about. And there's male versions and female versions of all of those. But to move on into the mistakes, just as we did with the dominant role, there are basically 4 very common mistakes that the submissive will make. The first one also applies to the dominant, and that is the proper mental state to scene. I have been in that mood to scene, and submissive ask for a check-in. So we go to the floor, as I've said I always do, and very respectfully, they explain their situation and asked if we could forego participating in a scene that evening, which was fine. With the explanation that I was given and the things going on, their mind completely would not have been in it, and they could have let me go too far, or it could have affected them negatively, and that's not at all what I wanted to do. So you have to be willing, and that is one of the biggest things that a submissive really needs to understand, especially in today's arena of BDSM and the DS relationship, is that you do have that right. You are a person, even though you may be a bottom slave and have to crawl around and eat out of dog dishes and only get scraps for dinner. But there comes a point to where you may be close to breaking. Something may be going on that you need that check-in and that actual human interaction. The next one completely falls right in line with the first one, and that is communication breakdown. Being willing to openly negotiate. It's the submissive's nature to want to please their dominant, to want to do everything in their power to make the dominant happy. And they will, of course, sacrifice of themselves to do that. And sometimes it's to a very unhealthy extent. So when it comes to the negotiation, it's very important. And the negotiation is not a one and done. It is a never-ending process. For as long as that DS relationship is in existence, then the negotiation is still taking place because things change over time. They may become a lot more comfortable. Some of those things that were marked as yellow or maybes, through time, they trust a little bit more, and they trust in your ability as a dominant. So they'll start changing some of those over. Or if you make a mistake and you go too far, they may withdraw a little bit. And you have to be okay with that, not be offended. If I go too far with something and during a check-in, my submissive lets me know that I have gone too far, and if they're open and honest, then they may say, you know what, let's not do that again for a while because that was too much. Hopefully that will never happen again. Has it happened in the past? Absolutely. And I think any honest person that's been a dominant for any length of time can admit that. And I'm always a little weary of the ones who refuse to admit that. Because especially when you're first starting out, and it's no excuse. It does not make it okay that it is common. I mean, it's common that within the first 5 years of becoming interested and starting to act on these interests, that your hard limits are broken. 1 in 5 people within the first 5 years. That's a massive amount of people. So there again, another reason why I find it so important for people to get educated on what BDSM and the DS relationship is really about. And again, that's what we're focusing on here for now, is the DS relationship. I am going to get into BDSM and the hardcore BDSM, the scening. If you're waiting for flogging and other activities, don't worry. It is coming in future podcasts. Also interviews with submissives, with switches, with dominants. It's not just going to be all my point of view. But first, I felt it important to go ahead and get these things defined before we move into that. The open negotiation.